The Republican Zone is brought to you by Drew Murray.
Good afternoon. You're watching USALA Media and the Republican Zone. I am your host, Drew Murray. I am here with my good friend, Britt Carpenter. It's been a while since we've been on a show together.
It's been a long time.
It was, in fact, I know when it was because I was running against Brian Sims in the 182nd Legislative District. So that had to be probably 2020, I guess. Yeah, it was 2020. So
I know we did a Zoom during COVID.
And that's right. We did
that, but actual face-to-face, yeah, it was like, talk about crazy train.
Yep.
There you go.
No, I'm not going to say anything about our former state representative Brian Sims. Brian and I actually got along, actually.
Me too.
And I haven't seen him in a long time, and what's weird, I don't even live in that district anymore. I was gerrymandered out of the district, out of the 182nd. I live in the 10th legislative district now.
They switched your district? You haven't moved either.
No. So 182nd used to be Center City, almost all of Center City. Now Logan Square, where I live, is the 10th legislative district, and Amon Brown is our state rep.
Oh.
So talk about, I love when people talk about Republicans gerrymandering the state. Well, I got gerrymandered right out of the 182nd, so there you go. But did you ever think you'd be on a Republican Zone show? Because you are not a Republican. But but I think you're.
I don't mind.
I think you're more conservative than most people think.
I would agree with you on that for sure. Yeah, I think people think that I'm this extreme liberal because of who I am and what I do and the nonprofit that I run, and I think people tend to get that misconception that because you have this role, this is who you are. And I've got a lot of conservative aspects to me. And
I think you're a small business owner. I think a lot of small business owners are more conservative than people think, and I think a lot of people who weren't small business owners who became one, they realized, wow, I'm becoming more conservative because it's tough to own a business, and it's tough to own a business in the city of Philadelphia. You're taxed every time you turn around.
Literally everything.
Literally, both. Just the wage tax, soda tax, the BIRT, where if you lose money, you get taxed still. If
that BIRT is what destroys me each year. And then if you're wrong in your projections, then you owe more money. And
I couldn't. I do not own a small business. I work for a small business, but I could not imagine how hard it must be to do business with the city of Philadelphia.
It is. I often considering just moving out of the city just because that way at least I'm not getting double taxed then.
Yeah.
Because the own and live is just basically like giving your whole life over to the city of Philadelphia. City of Philadelphia and I'm not quite sure what I get for that amount of money that I'm paying.
No, the services you absolutely
I get nothing.
Don't get.
And if I'm late with that, and I have no problems, if I'm late with it, they threaten to take your license away.
Wow.
Immediately, not even like hey, it's like, come on, you tend to forget that these are the people who are employing other, people in your city.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then again, what do you want when you have a mayor who doesn't want to wake up and be mayor every day? So, how can you hold everybody else accountable for things in the city?
It is amazing. And I, look, I'm a moderate. I liked Mayor Kenny when he came in. I thought, okay, this is going to be a moderate. He went ultra far left, which number one, I don't trust anybody who changes their opinions on things. As an adult, you might evolve a little bit, you might change a little bit, but he went from moderate to super far left, and even worse. Look, I have friends who are super far left. I don't pick my friends based on their party or their beliefs. He just doesn't want to be mayor. I think that's the worst part of everything. He doesn't want to be mayor.
And that's it. Well, I mean, when he made that comment, I wake up every day not wanting to be mayor.
Exactly.
Like when you hear that sort of statement, like how do you put any trust or respect in the man? And then you see him, and you're almost like, what a joke, and you want to turn it off. And it is a joke.
What happened even the most recent, and I don't even put too much blame on him on how initially the water crisis was handled. I mean, I don't think they knew what happened. They probably got the news that there was contamination, so they sent it out. Maybe they were a little premature. Maybe should have found a little bit out. But if it came back that they knew there were chemicals in the water and it was harmful, and they waited even an hour after, then they would have been vilified for that as well. But where was he on Sunday? I got the alert. And I looked at my phone, and I was actually at an event in Port Richmond, and I had another event later that night at Rodolph Shalom, And we were like, oh, we have to go back. We have to go back and get some water because, we talked about my cat socks, my daughters.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't worried about me. They weren't worried about them. They were like, well, the cats, we got to get their water bowls up and switch it out with bottled water. So I was like, so we went to Giant. By the time we got to Giant, an hour after the alert, they were already out.
Oh, yeah.
And we have a huge Giant on 23rd and Race. I mean, we thought, we'll get there. And we were going to do other shopping as well. We didn't realize how stupid that was to think that. I mean, there was like a mad rush on water. There was lines around the store, and we couldn't get our water. And again, I don't fault the initial reaction. What I fault is, why was he not on? He wasn't on air on Sunday at all. Where was he?
Race Street Cafe?
I'm not going to say that, but...
you asked me a question. I'm just giving you the answer that I thought might be possible.
It is possible.
No, and it's funny you say it, Drew. And I always give that jab about the Race Street Cafe, and I will. That's how I feel. But when your city is in a state of crisis, and it's being considered a state of crisis, the first thing that you should do when you're in control of that city is show face.
Sure.
And speak up. There was never any of that.
You didn't
Not
go anywhere.
one thing.
And if the water was safe, and he finally did a couple of days later, but go and drink the water. I mean, Councilmember Isaiah Thomas, I credit him. He was the first person on council who said, he went to the sink, he filled it up, and he drank it.
Yep.
And I think that made people feel better. And I'd like to know where Mayor Kenny was that weekend. Maybe he was away. And guess what? Everyone deserves a vacation. If he was away, then word should have come out, okay, Mayor Kenny is away, and the managing director will step up or state, his, or someone like Sheila Hess even, his, the city representative. There was nobody.
Nobody.
Because I think everybody, Sheila Hess, the managing director, I think they were all looking like, okay, where is he? When is he coming out? And it's because he doesn't want to do this job anymore. I don't know why he ran again in 2019. In 2015, let's be honest, he was pushed into it.
Absolutely.
I don't think he wanted it. And I think he said, you know what, I'll take one for the team. And he did. 2019, he could have easily stepped down.
He should have too.
He should have stepped down. And I think a lot of people running for mayor this cycle are looking back at 2019 and thinking, I should have challenged him.
Well, and look at how many people are running for mayor this cycle. I have never seen this many candidates on the ballot for mayor of Philadelphia. First of all, I'll take it back. Like, I love Nutter. Michael Nutter is still one of my favorites today.
I saw Mayor Nutter last night in an event briefly. He was very moderate as a mayor.
Very moderate.
Business friendly. There were some things that he did. He closed some fire stations, and I think that really, I didn't agree with that. But from a business standpoint, Philly flourished. And guess what? The murders were low. Crime was low.
Yep. Employment was high.
Employment was high.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting you say that. As a politician, as a human being, as an individual, you and I shouldn't have to agree on everything.
Yeah.
But we should be able to respect each other and what we do and how we call the shots on things. But when you have somebody that's in office and they're not even calling shots, and when they do, there's zero respect, maybe it's time to just get away now. Step down now.
And that's a good point. I don't think the people who work with him respect him anymore. I don't see, and that's key to a leadership role. And I look at even someone like Commissioner Outlaw. I don't blame her for a lot of things that are going on. I didn't blame her for a lot of the riots that went on. She had a plan, and the city said, no, we know how to handle this, and they changed her plan. But the problem with Outlaw that I see, I think she's a nice person. I see someone who doesn't have the respect of the people who work for her. And that's you could be the best person in the world, but when you lose that respect, you can't lead anymore. And I think that might be where she is. I'm not positive.
Or never given the opportunity to get that respect. I mean, in my mind, and of course this is where I go back to, she was brought in on several different levels. And, it was almost like, hey, now we're going to bring in a female to do this. And, because people are pushing female. People push, even for male candidate nowadays, they're pushing female.
Sure, and she was an outsider.
Absolutely.
You come in, and we're Philly. Look,
yeah.
we want to see, that's the first thing you ask. Where did you grow up? Are you from Philadelphia? What high school did you go to? She was a complete outsider. And Look,
she was never given the chance, though.
I agree. I don't think she was ever given the chance.
And whether female or not, she could do the job. Let's face it. Or she wouldn't have been brought in. She was never given the chance, and she doesn't have the support from the higher ups to do it. Plus, she's also battling a DA like we have.
Exactly. Oh no, we have, in my opinion, one of the worst DAs in the country, and she's trying to deal with that. So it was a tough job to come into. She was an outsider. I don't know if she was ever given the respect. Then the pandemic hit. Was it within her first year, if not the first few months, I think, that the pandemic hit. I forget when she started, but
19, right?
Yeah, it was a tough start for her. And look, maybe she does take some of the blame, but I will tell you, I've seen her. She commands a room. She is a good public speaker. She gets the respect in the room. And if I had seen her speak before, kind of some of what I would say are criticisms of her, I would have said, wow, she's impressive. If you watch her speak and the way she commands a room, she's impressive. But I just think she may have lost the support or the respect of the officers in the city of Philadelphia. And that's a problem.
And it's interesting because to me, like when I see the crime that's happening here in our city and I see, the crisis situations that occur, former commissioner was out. He was on TV constantly. You saw his voice. Yeah. You heard him talking. I don't see that with Outlaw. I don't see them putting her on TV. I don't see these press for these press engagements.
And it's surprising because she does speak well, and she does well in front of the camera. She does well in front of people. So that's surprising. And who knows who makes that decision? Honestly, it's probably her. So maybe she's making the decision not to do so. But you're right. I mean, when you look at the job that she has to do and the fact that she has to do it and work with our current district attorney and current mayor, well, you don't work with the current mayor because he's not there. So he's completely missing. So
absolutely,
he's
back in Iceland.
It's a very tough job. And Krasner was in budget hearings yesterday, asking for more money. He's doing a horrible job, but he wants $7 million in addition to what they're allocating for him. And I'm glad City Council grilled him. They grilled him. I don't know if you read
What does he want more money for? No, I didn't get a chance to hear about this.
Overall, he wants, he asked for more money. What they grilled him on, and I didn't watch the proceedings, so I don't know if it had to do with retail theft, but he brought up the fact that why retail theft is high. And you know what he did when he blamed, who he blamed retail theft on? What? Because the shop owners don't hire enough security. That's what he said. This was a quote in the Inquirer. I looked at it. I'm like, in 2017, the year prior to his taking office, they did not need security.
Why should people have to hire security for their businesses?
Isn't that what the services that we're paying for with our taxes?
Yeah, that's what 911 and
And guess what? And I walk into the Apple store on Walnut Street, and I see a police officer there, and I see stores like Apple. They can afford it and not even blink.
They have to.
Small businesses, most of which, like how many, the majority of the businesses on Walnut, I live in Center City, so on Walnut and Chestnut, these are small businesses. They can't afford a security guard.
No.
And what happens, and there are still, and we're rebuilding, and look, the pandemic had a lot to do with a lot of stores closing, but if I'm thinking about opening a store on Chestnut Street or Walnut Street, and I'm walking around and I'm looking at all these security guards, I'm saying, I'm not gonna be able to do this. So it's a barrier to entry to those small businesses.
Or not just that. Or if I'm a consumer, why do I want to shop in places like that?
Yeah, exactly.
Because already you're going in there and you don't feel safe or secure because of what's happening at the door. And I mean, yes, I understand there's higher price stores out there where you need this stuff. There's jewelry stores. There's certain precautionary measures you need to take at certain stores. But these smaller mom and pop type stores, no, absolutely not. That's why we pay taxes.
Yeah. And all the Wawas had security because they could afford it, and they still ended up closed. The one at 1900 Market Street, that's the closest one to my house. I would go there often.
That's gone.
It would be packed with people. So it wasn't that they weren't getting the business. It was that so much was getting stolen. And even though Wawa's a big corporation, their margins are still very low. So when people go in and walk in and they steal, and they know that as long as they steal under $500 worth of merchandise, the worst that they're going to see is a summary offense. Mm-hmm. And so the police aren't going to arrest them. The security guard, it's yes, it's their job to try to stop the theft, but they also they're a security guard. They don't necessarily want to put themselves in harm's way to the point where they
for a tasty cake.
For a tasty cake,
nobody's gonna.
I mean,
know,
the CVS's, the Wawas, the Rite Aids, the Wegmans, they're closing because, and and actually they're telling their security guards, don't, it's not worth it.
Don't stop them.
Don't stop them. And I don't even have a CVS or a Rite Aid. I don't have a pharmacy within, like, the reason I live in Center City, the reason I live in the city is convenience.
Right.
We basically have to drive to a drugstore now because they've all closed in my neighborhood. I mean, it's not a far. If I walk 3/4 of a mile, and I know that's not that far, but when you live in Center City, that feels like, oh my God, I got to go 3/4 of a mile.
Yeah, but if you have to drive that 3/4 of a mile, you got to find a parking spot. Then you got to find another parking spot when you get home, and it's just a hassle. The convenience of living in the city was to have these types of stores on almost every corner. To have this type of convenience, and it's not there.
And you know what people do now? If I'm in the suburbs, it's I stop and I pick up. I stop at a drugstore out there because it's a timing thing. I try to do all my shopping in Philadelphia, but it's somewhat impossible.
But it's cheaper too in the suburbs.
But it's cheaper. Well, and why and you're paying less sales tax. Mm-hmm. If you're buying sodas or sweetened beverages, you're
not getting taxed on that.
You're not. You're probably paying literally a third less than if you did in the city. So, it's. When I listen to people and they say, "Oh, we need better services, we need this, so we need to raise taxes," I say we are already one of the most taxed cities in the country. Probably of the largest cities, we are. If you look at and you got to look at everything. People are like, "Oh no, New York. It's more taxed in New York. It's more taxed in San Francisco." You got to look at everything because we have a wage tax, we have the soda tax, we have the BR, and that's resident, and on the business side, we have the BIRT. What I always remind people of, because people forget about it, when you buy a house, the transfer tax in the city of Philadelphia is like 4.6 something %. If you live in a collar county, it's 2%. So people talk about affordable housing in Philadelphia. I'm like, well, let's talk about what Philadelphia can do to make housing more affordable, because it's a barrier to entry with those closing costs, because our transfer tax is double what it is in every other area of the state, which, with the exception of Allegheny County. I think Allegheny County and Pittsburgh are higher, but the taxes, they never end. And I love the temporary taxes. And this was Nutter. I know you like Nutter, but he took our sales tax from 7 to 8. But it was a
just because I like somebody doesn't mean I agree with everything that they've done.
It was a temporary tax, but we all know tax. There's no such thing as a temporary tax.
Oh no, yeah. Temporary going to hurt your pocket until you learn to make more money to pay for those taxes. Like the costs right now, the ridiculous tax they put on the real estate right now, property tax.
Yeah,
crazy.
Mine went up 40%.
40%. So, Drew, let's, you peel the layers back and you look at, the average Joe or the average Jane sitting here in Philadelphia who, first of all, you can't live in Philadelphia and make less than $45,000.
I'd agree with that.
$45,000 is actually almost like a poverty level in Philadelphia, I'd say. At least that's my opinion. How do you take the people like that who are just, trying to make it day by day and survive?
And add 40%.
And
I was able to absorb. I should say we. My wife would get upset because we both pay the bills. But we were able to absorb it. It wasn't necessarily easy but we're lucky, so we were able to absorb it. A lot of people were not able to absorb it. My salary didn't go up 40%.
Nobody's went up 40%.
Nobody's went up 40%.
And if you show me who did, I'm applying for the job. But
so people who, there are plenty of people who could not afford it, and. Mayor, I almost said Mayor Nutter, Mayor Kenny came out and said, "Oh, we didn't have any new taxes." I'm like, well, yes, you did, because you raised the values. Now, not everybody went up 40%, and a few people didn't go up at all, but for the most part, everyone I've spoken to, and this is anecdotal, said their taxes went up. So that means they did raise taxes. He said they didn't raise taxes, meaning the millage rate, meaning they didn't raise the actual percentage, but they raised taxes.
So now that takes me to where that liberal side of me comes out. And how do you raise, a property tax 40% when you have homeowners in places like North Philly and moving up the line, Frankfurt, those areas where you do have people are always like, well, they can move. Where are they going to move?
Yeah.
People always say that's the solution where they could just move. No, they can't. These are people's homes. So how do you tax them that when they're barely making $15 an hour some of the places?
Well, they can't move because then they'd have to pay the transfer tax.
Exactly. So, they're damned if they do, damned if they don't. And the city isn't doing anything to really help the people of the city. They're doing to help the city.
And they could have changed the millage rate. And this isn't on the mayor. I will give him that. This would have been legislation the council could have passed to change the millage rate. So that wouldn't reduce it for everybody, but it could have been done in a way that the tax did not bring in more revenue than it did, because it brought in a ton of revenue. They could have changed the millage rate. They don't like to do that, or they didn't want to do it because they didn't want businesses to be taxed to change their millage rate. And with the uniformity clause in the state of Pennsylvania, they have to tax at the same rate from a residential standpoint and a business standpoint. But my thought was, why not give businesses a break? The businesses pay a ton of taxes as well. Why not change the millage rate? And look, raise it the cost of living. Fine. Yes, if COLA goes up 2 or 3%, yeah, the city of Philadelphia is going to need 2 to 3% more in revenue just in order to stay even. But 40%.
40%'s a lot.
40% is insane.
Crazy.
Now, I don't, and this is what I always say. The Office of Property Adjustment in Philadelphia is one of the worst departments in the city of Philadelphia. They use comps to value houses. So places like Fishtown, that was a great example. Okay, so I live in a $200,000 house. Across the street, a $900,000 house goes up. Well, this person's house, their income didn't go up,
right,
but their value of their house increased dramatically. Why not tie increases in property values to the cost of living?
Yeah.
So if it goes up 2 or 3%, it goes up 2 or 3%. And guarantee that for as long as someone owns that home. And when that home is sold, then that new market value, it will be taxed on that market value. Number one, you could get rid of the OPA, the Office of Property Adjustment. You could give people stability in knowing what their bills are going to be. I mean, that's important to know. Okay, my cost is this year. What's it going to be next year?
People want to know what their budget assessments are for things.
What the budget is. So if you do that, then you keep people, number one, in their homes, because when it goes up 40%, people absolutely could not stay in their homes. They had to sell, they had to move, they had to do this. And guess what else would help solve? Gentrification. Because that's why people say, why do areas get gentrified? Because people get priced out because they can't afford the taxes. Now, that's only going to solve part of the problem, because if you rent an apartment and that rent goes up, then we'll still have that problem with gentrification. But if we handle at least part of the problem, and also, by the way, push for home ownership, because that is something that we should be pushing for, then that helps solve some of the problems with gentrification. So,
do you remember years ago when the city used to help people get homes,
yeah,
or help people buy their homes, and there would be funds out there, there were grants, there were different types of programs they can get involved with? I don't see that anymore.
No.
I do not see it, because all I see is the city wants people to buy these $500,000 mega condos that are going up, these studio condos that are, hey, we're going to throw this on the corner of Frankfurt and Lehigh. You're going to pay $500,000 for it. Good luck.
Yeah.
And nowadays, they don't care. Years ago, I remember this happening, and it was making people, it was helping them keep their homes. It was taking more pride of their ownership and their neighborhood and their community. I think what happens is when you raise these taxes and you're charging people more money and people can't afford it, that's when the communities start to, become trashed.
Yeah.
And they're not taking care of them. There's not a sense of pride. I mean, Philadelphia was always known for a sense of pride in their neighborhoods and where they're from. Yeah. I don't see that anymore, and I think it's because of the way things are.
I think home ownership is going down. And there's other, I'm not disparaging renters, but when you are vested in a community, when you buy a house there, you're going to be more vested. I see it in the RCO Neighborhood Association world. We allow board members to be renters or homeowners, but most are homeowners because they're more vested in their communities.
Right.
So that's why, when you're in my neighborhood, you can tell which blocks, because a lot of blocks have these, when you live in Center City, some of them have these huge houses.
Right.
Some of them are single family home. A lot of them are RM1 and have multifamily. They're multifamily. You can tell the blocks that are are owner occupied versus ones that are rentals, for two reasons. Number one, I think they have the vested interest, and I will say also because it's harder to put trash out when you have when you have an apartment. You don't have anywhere to put it. I put my trash in my garage until it's ready, and then so they don't really have anywhere to put it. So
because if you put it outside your front door, you're going to get fined by the city.
Exactly, yeah. So
and if you have a little back slab in your back area, then you got to drag the trash from your back slab through your entire living space to the front door. So it's very difficult.
And there's nowhere to put the trash. I mean, I remember when I had an apartment when I was younger. You don't have a trash can to put it in. Meaning an outdoor trash can to put it in.
No.
When the trash would full, I'd put it on the fire escape, and then what would happen? It would be a squirrel would get into it and be everywhere. So you had to keep the trash in your house as long as possible. So but I think the bigger reason is people are vested in their community. They take the trash out every day. When I come home on a Monday, I clean up the trash because the trash. When the trash is collected, inevitably, and it's a hard job, so I'm not saying the sanitation workers are doing a bad job. It's a hard job, and I get it. So I pick up the trash in front of my house. I don't think that always happens when you're dealing with areas that are the blocks are full of renters.
You said it before. Renters don't have that sense of pride in their community.
Yeah. Some do.
Some do. I've been a renter since I've been back in Philadelphia for the past 17 years. I've rented. I do not own. I rent. I've been in the same place for the last 9 years, and I probably have more pride in a lot of what I do out there.
And I wonder if you're an anomaly. So you've been there in the same place for 9 years. Normally when you rent, a lot of times people are moving around, going to different neighborhoods.
I am an anomaly in many ways, but yeah, for sure. And, but I like where I'm at. I like my community. I like my neighbors.
Yeah.
I like the sense of I'm able to come home and say hi to somebody and call them by their first name.
Exactly.
Not just a head nod or oh, hey, when did you move in?
And that's an interesting point too. Yeah, when people stay there a long time, you know your neighbors. You're going to be more vested in the community. You want to take pride in your home and what you do, and that's why And this is we hear a lot about street cleaning in Philadelphia. I'm very split on it. Number one, if there's illegal dumping, absolutely Philly needs to go in and take care of it. But street sweeping, I'm old school. I think I should sweep in front of my own house and not have to pay an additional, not necessarily, not have the city pay for these street sweeping. I'd rather that money go to somewhere else.
But why is it certain areas in Philly have the streets clean and other areas don't?
I think it's more of a parking thing. People battle the parking. Because my area, some people say, well, Center City gets cleaned up. I'm like, my street doesn't get swept.
No, because they tell you can't park on this street between certain hours. Where are you going to park?
Yeah,
you can't,
exactly. Yeah,
you're already parking a mile away from your house to begin with. Now it's okay, now I'm going to park on the other side of Broad.
Yeah.
to walk.
So it's hard. Yeah. So I think the reason there's not more street sweeping is because of the parking situation, because they got to pull it out. But I don't know if we should. I clean in front of your own house. I mean, I take responsibility.
It's not that difficult.
It's not that difficult. Every Monday I clean up in front of my house.
How big is it? How big of an area is it, Drew?
Yeah.
It's not that big.
No,
you got a sidewalk and a gutter.
Yeah.
And
once in a while, a few times a year, I sweep. I literally get out and sweep, and I get in the street, and I sweep the street to take out the buildup near the curb.
You're an anomaly there because not many people do
that.
No,
I know. And
do you know where you see that? In the old school neighborhoods.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like deep South Philly, Bridesburg.
And the grandmothers are out there.
Yes.
They're sweeping their stoop.
And they're sweeping the stoop, they're sweeping the street, but also they do that because that was a chance to connect with the neighbors too. That was their way of connecting with neighbors and bringing that sense of, community within their neighborhoods.
And I love Center City, but that's one thing I don't. I wish I was in another kind of more of a community, because people don't sit on their stoop in Center City. And I also have a shared driveway, so I wouldn't be seeing my neighbors anyway. But
right.
I think it's so cool when you're driving around South Philly, or Bridesburg, or some of these areas where people are just sitting out on their porch. In Bridesburg, they even have porches. It's even cooler.
Yeah.
So that is something I do wish. Sometimes I love Center City, but I do sometimes wish I lived in some of the surrounding communities, because it's more of a feeling of a community.
And when I walk around Center City with my dog walking company, the same thing. I live in the Wissahickon, Roxborough area. And everybody always says, well, why don't you live in the city? I don't think I could picture that, because I really enjoy that sense of unity in the community that I've got with my neighbors, and that when I walk them, or they look after you.
Yeah.
They know you. They know your name. They know your number. They're going to call you if they see something weird.
Exactly.
And I really enjoy that. And when I walk, for example, I have clients over in Fittler Square. When I walk around Fittler Square, I don't feel a neighborhood.
No, you're right. And it's funny you mentioned dogs. When I had a dog, I felt like I knew my neighbors better.
Absolutely.
I knew their dog's name. I didn't know their name.
I didn't say you knew the dog's names.
I knew the dog name. I didn't know.
Same.
I do know a lot of my neighbors, but I felt like I knew more of my neighbors when I had a dog. Now I have friggin' 4 cats.
I have 4 cats too, though. You want another one? Because I have one that I can't stand.
I do not. I do not.
Sure?
We had 2 cats.
I'll give it to you as a gift.
Oh, that would be 5. That would be 4 too many, I think. We had 2 cats, and then we got a COVID cat because we were bored. And so it was. My wife actually texted me. She was at Petco, and it was a rescue. It was a black cat, and she's like, "Oh, yes. they don't get adopted as often. Can we bring it home?" And she thought I was going to say no, and I was like, "Sure." I said I must have been drinking, but I wasn't. I wasn't. And then last year, it was almost a year ago exactly. She was driving down the Benjamin Franklin Parkway and saw a little tiny ball in the middle of the road. She stopped her car, opened the doors, stopped traffic, picked up this cat, brought it home. She handed it to me. I thought it was so small. I mean, it was probably 2 weeks old. I'd never seen a cat that small, a kitten that small. I thought it was a rat. I'm like, she just picked up a rat and brought it home and handed it to me.
Did you have to bottle feed it?
We did not bottle feed it. I know it was a Thursday because we called Morris Animal Refuge and we were going to drop the kitten off there. They were closed on Thursdays. Mm-hmm. That's why we have a cat.
I could have told you that. I was on the board at Morris for 9 years. So you said Thursday board, I think they're closed.
Yeah, they're closed on Thursdays. So we're like, we'll bring
Anybody
it
in Philly knows that. No.
Yeah, we'll bring it in tomorrow. And then, and I'll be honest with you, it was me the next day. I was like, we're not getting rid of this cat.
So you have 4 of them.
Now we have 4.
Do you like all 4 of them?
I do.
You do.
And I'm more of a dog person. My wife's allergic to dogs. We had a Wheaten Terrier, so with since they were hyperallergenic, we could have the Wheaten Terrier. Mm-hmm. But I do like dogs more, but it's so hard. It's so hard when you live in a city and you can't just open the back door. And
that's why I live where I live, because I got my little back area. I got the yard, and you can do that. And I got the cats. And 3 of my cats are cool. 1 sucks.
Yeah.
My black cat's my coolest. Yeah, 1 sucks. The worst.
Oh man,
I can't stand her.
My cats are funny. They all have personality. The oldest is Dollface. She's the matriarch. I call her the OG.
She runs stuff.
She's fat, so she's the biggest. And she just kind of walks around. People mess with her sometimes, but she doesn't like to mess with the others. And then our black cat is Wednesday. Our 1 male cat is Remington. And then the new one is Nutmeg, and she's a menace to society.
That's the little one that you just found?
Yep, the one. She's a year old. She's a menace to society. She and Remington, I call them the mafia. I mean, they're always plotting something. I think they're going to kill us in the middle of the night. I'm telling you.
Can show everybody your socks.
Yeah, I have my cat socks on.
And they say cat dad.
Is a cat dad?
Do that? Yes,
I didn't know that. Cat dad? Look at that. I always wear
you in the morning.
I always wear cat. Oh, it does say cat dad.
It does.
I always wear crazy socks, but I didn't know it said cat dad.
Yeah,
there you go.
I'll tell you, man, you've more cojones than me. I wouldn't walk around with those on.
I've lost my masculinity.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It has nothing masculinity. It would remind me of that one devil cat I have that I can't stand, and I wouldn't want them on my. But they are great socks. But animals, they make your life better. It's that therapeutic aspect to them.
They do. Oh yeah, they make. My cats make. I thought this was called the Republican Zone. I don't know how we're talking about cats at this point.
Because after talking about Republicans, you got to go to.
You got to talk about something. Well, just politics in general. It's just like I post stuff on Twitter, and sometimes I just make it funny because I'm like, you post on Twitter, and look, it is a lot of it negative. I'm running for political office, so you do negative things. I often do on Larry Krasner, our district attorney. It's pretty easy, but sometimes I just put funny stuff up.
Is it the truth?
Everything's the truth.
Then it's not negative. It's just the truth.
It's facts. That is true.
There you go. Anyway, I just want to make you feel better.
Absolutely. So I think we're kind of coming up to the end of our time here. I think we actually stopped. We were supposed to take a break at 15 minutes, but it's.
How can we take a break? We're talking about cats. We're talking about Krasner. We're talking about, the cats were the best part of the subject because you got somebody, we talked about Kenny.
No. So we thought we were going to have our other friend on, James Whitehead. We're going to have to. We'll have to talk to him about.
We'll find him somewhere.
Being on time next time, but I think we're going to wrap this up. We're going to come back on. I'll come on your show next time.
Sounds good.
What is your show? What's your show called again now?
Be a Voice.
It's still Be a Voice.
Be a Voice.
Okay.
2.0. Just rebooted it.
All right. Be a Voice 2.0. So
I call it 2.0.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on my show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And maybe if James shows up in the next minute, we'll do a quick 10, 15 minutes with him. But yeah, we're gonna have to talk to that young man about being on time.
Maybe he was involved with something important. Maybe there was an emergency.
This is true. No, I'm gonna talk. He's always late.
Maybe we should just get him a watch.
He is always late. I think it's.
Is he?
I think he's a millennial. He might not even be a millennial. He might be younger than millennial. I don't know what he is.
I don't even know those tables anymore. But you know,
these young men and women, we got to teach them how to come on time and work on Lombardi time. I work on Lombardi time. Early is on time is late, and late is unacceptable.
I get anxiety, man, if I'm late.
That's right. No, yeah. I was here I was here 15 minutes before my show.
Absolutely, yeah. Actually, I saw you pulling in, and I was a little mad that you got a closer spot. But anyway, thanks so much for having me.
I have a mini, so I was able to pull into that smaller spot. Pulled right in. All right. Well, thank you all for listening. You're watching USALA Media and the Republican Zone. Have a great day.
The Republican Zone is brought to you by Drew Murray.